I noticed that my husband went away on our daughter's wedding day, so I sold the house and left suddenly. "Where are you? The ceremony is starting," I yelled into the phone, finally getting a hold of my husband, Kevin. "I'm on a family trip in France," he replied, his voice nonchalant. "What about our daughter's wedding?" I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. Kevin simply laughed and hung up the phone. "Family, huh?" I repeated the words to myself, staring at the disconnected phone, my heart sinking. I quickly shifted my mood and reached out to someone else. "I need it done as soon as possible, so please start now," I said assertively. "Yes, I'll leave everything in your hands. Please start immediately." "Certainly," a lively voice responded from the other end. The person was from a civil engineering company that had been close to my family for years. I suppressed a laugh, thinking to myself, "Go ahead, enjoy yourself now. Enjoy your so-called family trip. I think this will be your last pleasure." My name is Catherine. I'm 57 years old, a housewife with 2 children. My husband Kevin is 59. Our marriage was a kind of political arrangement about 32 years ago, a partnership between our companies. But this marriage life is likely to end soon, thanks to Kevin's repeated issues. Not that there were signs of separation from the beginning. At least, I intended to build a great family with Kevin, despite our marriage being primarily for business alignment. Kevin felt the same at the time. That changed after our 2 children were born shortly after the marriage. I gave birth to our first child, Joe, the following year. Our daughter, Ava, was born soon after. I was happy to have children, but parenting was harder than I imagined. At that time, Kevin, still in his early 32s, was under training at his father's company. Perhaps that's why he accumulated a lot of stress. Even when he returned home, he didn't participate in childcare, despite seeing me overwhelmed by the cries of our 2 children. He did nothing. Rather, it seemed he grew indifferent and started spending more time away from home, using work as an excuse. Well, honestly, I have my regrets too. Back then, I was overwhelmed with childcare, but was convinced I could manage it without anyone's help. The one who helped me was my mother. My parents are no longer with us, but I'm deeply grateful for their support during that time. If it hadn't been for the housekeeper my mother arranged, I would have been depressed. But once that period was over, the children were truly adorable. With Kevin often not returning from his parents or his work, parenting became my purpose in life. Growing suspicious of Kevin's constant absences, I once asked him, "Where do you always go?" At the time, Kevin dodged the question with vague answers. But when he didn't join our children's birthdays, I finally asked him. His response was, "You can do whatever you want with your side. I have other things I have to do." I couldn't understand what he was talking about. What could be so important that you'd miss your children's events? I snapped at him that time, and Kevin's reply was, "You know I have a younger sister, right?" "Yes, she's 13 years younger." "Was it Madeline?" "Yes, that's right, Madeline. She's having her coming-of-age ceremony soon, so I need to discuss some things with my parents about it." He was putting his sister ahead of his children, and I couldn't help but say, "Are you kidding?" I was so angry, but as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Kevin told me, "You've been so wrapped up with the kids and ignoring me that you probably didn't realize, but she's been having a tough time too." I was left speechless by his response, yet this kind of incident became more frequent. He has even started to use his sister as an excuse to refuse to come to his own children's events, but would go to her coming-of-age ceremony. He would miss his children's school ceremonies, but make it to Madeline's graduation. Where on earth is home for Kevin, and who is his family? I have thought that many times. And so I celebrated our children's birthdays and attended kindergarten and school ceremonies alone. In the children's commemorative photos, their father's presence faded away. Eventually, they also realized that their father didn't participate in their events. Later, as they faced exams, further studies, and job hunting, they proceeded to make their own decisions without consulting us first. Both of them would first find what they wanted to do, then look for schools that matched their interests, and decide if they could apply. Their consultations with me were merely asking, "I want to go here. What do you think?" I remember my daughter saying as early as middle school, "Because I don't want to burden you." Having clear goals isn't a bad thing. It probably indicates a strong sense of independence. Yet it makes me sad that they've learned not to rely on us as they saw their father has been unreliable. I hardly set a good example myself because I've been a housewife since we got married. I was sometimes involved in his family business, though. My parents also wanted to leave me some kind of asset early on, and my brother was also in favor of that. My parents passed away 10 years ago. They were still in their 70s. The company went into the hands of my brother Robert, and I was given some other assets through the inheritance. Kevin's younger sister Madeline, whom he took care of in every way, was spoiled by her parents and him. She graduated from college and got a job at a subsidiary company through her father's connections, but it seemed she was never really committed to her job. After working for 2 years, she quit, claiming it was time to prepare for marriage. She never liked working in the first place and ended up living a leisurely life at home. Neither her parents nor her brother Kevin said anything about it. They seemed rather pleased with her for not working, as they thought she couldn't work anyway. After that, she actively participated in matchmaking dates, but for some reason they always ended up breaking off. The main reason, it turns out, was mostly because of Kevin's opposition. Whenever Kevin opposed, Madeline would simply accept it, saying, "If you say so." Before I knew it, she was already in her 40s. I heard she's still unmarried and just chilling around, not moving forward with her life. Her parents are now in their 80s. Unlike my parents, who passed away early, they're still physically strong and active, but normally, one would still worry about them. Yet Madeline does nothing and continues to live freely. Since his father is still healthy and remains the president of the company, there's no sign of Kevin taking over as president. Although Kevin might want to take over the role of president soon, his father is not ready to step down. I don't know the reasons behind this. I had long since grown tired of Kevin's behavior. My brother and his wife even suggested that it might be best to break up after our children were independent, and I was thinking of starting a second phase of my life. Fortunately, my parents had transferred a considerable estate to me early on. With that, I could either start something new or take a break for a while. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I was gathering evidence to be in a favorable position for the divorce. My brother's lawyer had been advising me on this matter, but an event occurred that put these discussions on hold. It turns out that our daughter, Ava, was getting married. Her partner, 8 years older than her, was a senior employee at my brother's company where she worked. This man was quite capable and was rumored to be transferred to an overseas branch soon. Interestingly, having seen Madeline as a cautionary tale, Ava never disclosed her familial ties at work. It's foolish to flaunt such things even at school, you know. People don't like it when you show off being wealthy, was her point. I tried to tell Kevin about the wedding, but as expected, Kevin only talked about how busy he was and would quickly flee from the conversation. I just responded with a, "Oh, is that so?" I still informed him of the date and the venue, but I made no particular effort to confirm his availability. Then, on the day of the wedding, we all headed to the wedding venue. But that morning there was no sign of him showing up. I tried contacting Kevin. "Where are you? The ceremony is starting," I yelled into the phone. "I'm on a family trip in France," he replied, his voice nonchalant. "What about our daughter's wedding?" I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. Kevin just laughed and then hung up the phone. I sighed and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. "Family, huh?" I repeated it several times in my mind. Maybe the trip to France was with his parents and Madeline. Although I knew it, I was truly astounded to see it go this far. To Kevin, family meant him, his parents, and Madeline, not us, of course. I've known this for a long time. I had no expectations from a marriage of convenience. He probably thought the same. The difference was that I initially tried to make it work, but he didn't. It was for the sake of the children that I've been doing this for over 20 years. The children themselves might have thought they didn't need a father, yet I wanted to maintain a certain degree of public presence until they became adults. That might have been just my selfishness. The children might have thought it was much easier without such a thing. Well, it's all right. I sighed and dialed the phone again, to the somewhat distant voice on the other line. "Hello, it's me," I said. "Yes, Catherine. Regarding the matter I had asked you about before, I need it done as soon as possible, so please start now," I spoke forcefully. "Yes, I leave everything in your hands. Please start immediately. Certainly." I heard a very lively voice from the other side of the line. The person I was speaking to was from a civil engineering and construction company that had been close to my family for a long time, and I thought to myself while trying to suppress a laugh, Go ahead, enjoy yourself now. Enjoy your so-called family trip. I think this will be your last pleasure." Then a month later, I received a call. I received the call on my tablet. On the screen appeared a lawyer with a full, beaming smile. "So, have the documents been processed already?" I couldn't help but sound excited. "Yes, I've taken care of everything necessary," the lawyer replied. This lawyer over the screen is a person employed by my family's company. I continued asking him, "Can you tell me what has happened over these past 2 weeks?" "I thought you might ask, so I've prepared everything," he said, smiling happily at me on the screen. Right now there is distance between the lawyer and me. "Yes, I have bought a house and I'm living in Italy." This move happened because Ava's husband, whom she married, had been transferred to an overseas branch, as had been mentioned before. Ava said he was worried about my language skills. "But you know," she continued, "you never know until you try, and once you're there, things work out, so it's fine. I've always managed somehow." Ava and her husband are now based in the Italian branch, and I live in a separate building on the premises of their new home. It serves the dual purpose of living close by and enhancing security. The lawyer I'm seeing on the screen seems to be adjusting some equipment first. He then showed me what had happened during Kevin and his family's trip to France. "Wait a minute, why can't we stay at this hotel today?" exclaims my father-in-law, who is wearing an ever-brightly colored shirt. "I'm sorry, but today the hotel is reserved for a wedding and its reception." "What? This hotel, the best in France?" Yes, the wedding in France was Ava and her husband's. Kevin and his family had flown from the U.S. to the Bordeaux area, but by that time we had already headed directly to Paris. We planned to enjoy a leisurely resort stay before the wedding. They were completely unaware of this. I still contacted them on the day of the event, just in case. "It's ridiculous! They didn't even know we were in France. It just shows how little interest they had in us." "It's strange, isn't it?" the lawyer said. "Catherine, you did inform them of the situation, right?" "I did, through postcards and messages. I don't usually get through to them, so the fact that he picked up the phone on the wedding day was probably just to show off their family trip." The lawyer chuckled at that. "I made sure to state that the wedding would be held at this hotel in France, but what's wrong with them coming up to the hotel and saying they can't stay there? They could at least have said they were there to attend the wedding," he added. In the video footage, we saw them being abusive to the hotel staff. There was also a clueless-looking Madeline, unable to understand what was being said. The explanations were in English, but the murmurs around were in French. Madeline had majored in French in college and could converse decently, perhaps. But after about 20 years, it seemed she had completely lost her ability to understand French. Picking up whispers from the surrounding staff, it sounded like they were discussing that these were the people expected at today's wedding. "We had instructed the staff accordingly. If these people said they were here to attend the wedding, let them in. If not, and they were just for dining or staying, then no, because we had booked the whole place for our wedding." The wedding was a great success, and my daughter, her husband, and I left that day for Italy from an international airport in France. We had no intention of returning to the U.S. On the other hand, they were so angry that they decided to return to the U.S. from the same international airport. However, they were stopped right there. This was because the credit card that Kevin was carrying had become unusable. Moreover, the staff who had been following them managed to capture all this on video footage. "What? My credit card doesn't work. Is this one too?" "Yes, sir. The card isn't even in your name, is it?" "Yes, that's right." Kevin had taken my credit card and my bank's debit card, so I had them blocked. That bank account is for my assets, yet Kevin had accessed it. I was just pretending not to notice because I knew that doing such a thing would eventually come to light. I had another account set aside which I could use freely, so even if funds were reduced from one, it didn't impact my lifestyle. I overlooked it to gather evidence. Damn, why have they stopped working? Of course, because the owner has blocked them, right? If you say that, I can't go home. I don't have that much cash on me. The exasperated staff sighed and said, "Anyway, these cards are no good, so you cannot board the flight to the U.S. They then drove them away from the airport. Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us? Like this video and subscribe for more. Now let's dive back into the story. They reluctantly returned and went to the consulate of the U.S. to borrow money to get home. It took a considerable amount of time to reach that decision, though. It seems they didn't immediately think of relying on the consulate. Moreover, because it was embarrassing, they tried borrowing money from acquaintances, which also took some time. When they finally realized that they couldn't borrow money from them, they asked the embassy for help. They had already passed their planned period of stay and could no longer afford to be shameful. Eventually, they were thoroughly scolded at the consulate. After all, the reason was that the credit cards were blocked. They were judged their actions inappropriate, and they were even detained a bit. With great difficulty, they finally returned to the U.S., repaid the travel expenses to the consulate from their account, and came home to complain to me, only to find nothing left. At that moment, the sight of them was just too much to hold back laughter. "What is this?" Kevin yelled in front of the empty home and his parents, dropping their bags. Our house had been built nearly 32 years ago by my parents when we got married. It was always well maintained, so it could have been sold if we wanted to, but it was under my name. Thinking of living in Italy, I wanted nothing left there, so the items belonging to Kevin were stored in a storage unit, and everything else was disposed of by a disposal company. That was another phone call I made on the day of the wedding. What the heck is going on? Kevin scratched his head, stomped around, and finally fell to his knees, pounding on the suitcase. I couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight. Then Ava came over, hearing my laughter. "What happened, Mom? Look at this." "Your father's made a spectacle of himself. He's no longer my dad," I said while pointing to the screen. On the screen in front of the now vacant land with a for sale sign, it was completely cleared. "Ah, that's where our house used to be. Empty now," Ava said with a wry smile. When she became an adolescent, she thought her father, who was always more protective of her aunt than he was of her, was just disgusting. I know she always talked about wanting to cut off the relationship with him quickly. "It's nice to see your daughter is also pleased," so said the lawyer. "Thank you for the fascinating footage, but there's more to it, isn't there?" I asked. "Oh no, that's not all." The lawyer gave a sinister smile. "Next is this." And Kevin was scowling in frustration at something. "What does this mean?" The sound of him slamming the table could be heard. "It means that your wife, Catherine, asked you to file for divorce." "Catherine would never say such a thing. How can you be so sure?" Kevin started to say something, but then seemed to have realized. "That's right, the credit cards. Why on earth did she block the cards?" Kevin muttered, to which the lawyer replied matter-of-factly, "It's obvious, isn't it? Anyone would do the same if they knew a large sum of money was being used from their account without permission. Why were you using Catherine's cards in the first place? Didn't you have your own?" Then Kevin muttered, "Ah," and fell silent. "Or perhaps you didn't have enough money to live on." "We have already looked into that." Honestly, there wasn't much money in Kevin or his parents' accounts at the moment, just a little for business expenses, and he had been spending the rest of my savings. He took my cards under the misguided interpretation that it was family money. I never permitted him to use my cards, so when I say I stopped them, that was all. And as a result of stopping them, we found out quite a lot had been spent. "Spent? No, this is supposed to be our money, right?" "Not at all. What are you talking about? Were you not aware of this?" the lawyer asked, sounding puzzled. "What you were using was Catherine's assets, from before your marriage, from before the marriage." "No, that can't be. Catherine never told me that. She probably didn't feel the need to mention it as long as nothing happened. It was fine, but something did happen, didn't it?" "What?" Kevin stood up abruptly. "Catherine said she no longer sees a reason to consider you family. At least your children no longer see you as their father." "What are you talking about? That makes sense. Do you even know which universities your children attended, what they studied, and who they married to? And most importantly, do you know where your daughter's wedding was held?" Kevin couldn't say anything. "By the way," the lawyer then told him of the date and location of Ava's wedding. Kevin's expression changed drastically. "No way," he muttered under his breath. "Yes, the hotel you tried to stay at that day. That place." Kevin leaned forward. "Yes, didn't you hear there was a wedding there that day?" "Well, maybe, but at that time, the wedding—" "Then why didn't they let us in?" "That's simple." The lawyer then explained what I had told the hotel staff. Catherine had already told them in advance. "Why did you check your phone? Haven't you checked at all? Or did you have another phone?" Faced with these rapid questions, Kevin remained silent. Well, thinking about it, it makes sense why I couldn't get through to him. Kevin probably had some phones, and the one that I got the number of he usually kept turned off, since my messages never got read too often. I had suspected that. I asked if he changed his phone. He would probably have just given me a new number anyway. That's why I never asked. All of this was part of my plan. I have evidence that I sent messages and left voicemail many times. I made sure to make myself look like I was getting more and more upset, like, "Are you listening to my voicemails? Are you listening? I want you to see my messages." Of course, the messages were the same. It appears that I tried other methods as well, yet Kevin had shut out everything that could connect to me. Therefore, the lawyer continued, Catherine is also going to sue you for the money you spent without her permission and for neglecting the family. Oh, and I heard from her parents that they're cutting off the financial support to your company. What? Let me see Catherine just once, Kevin pleaded, nearly in tears. No, you can't do that. Why? Where is Catherine now? She's not in the U.S. anymore. Kevin's face at that moment was unbearable to watch. After the wedding, Catherine and the others immediately went to Italy. What? And you were detained, right? While you were stuck there, they made their way there. He was listening to it with his fists clenched and trembling. Ava, watching that, couldn't help but laugh. So what do you think? The lawyer asked. Is there any more entertaining footage? I asked. Yes, there are, the lawyer replied. This is footage from a recent visit that your brother Robert and I made to the company right after your divorce was finalized and the corporate ties were dissolved, the lawyer said. This, and he showed me another footage featuring my brother Robert. You're cutting off the support? What does that mean? Our company can't survive without your support. This time, his parents raised their voices. Both their faces were sunburned. They asked, Yes, I know, but what's with your face? Did you go on a trip somewhere? In the video, Robert was asking his father, To the wedding? Well, Ava's wedding, yes, that's right, Ava's. It was in France. Robert smirked. I was there that day. Upon hearing this, the two of them gasped. Of course, it was my dear niece's wedding. My wife and I both went to the wedding in Paris. By the way, we knew what you were doing on that day, though. Sweat dripped down their faces. And yet, you didn't recall the name just now. How uninterested must you be in those kids? Robert seized the moment to question them further. How can you not remember the name of one of your only two grandchildren? Well, they were never attached to us. Whether they are attached to you or not isn't the issue. Have you ever done anything for them? The two were at a loss for words, but suddenly there was the sound of someone barging into the room. Wow, heavyweight. Amazing. How old is this person? Ava gasped, unable to hide her astonishment. The person who suddenly appeared on the screen was Madeline. Madeline is 42 years old. She's 10 years older than my husband. Oh no, she's a parasite single indeed. That was a modern expression. Thinking about it now, she has been a parasite single for 20 years. What will she do next? I then looked back at the screen. If the support is cut off, what are we supposed to do? What should I do? Madeline, not addressing the lawyer but her parents, pressed for answers. I don't know. Her father could only mumble his words. Well, the divorce has been finalized, and as far as we're concerned, we have no reason to finance you anymore. What? Why did you let the divorce go through? Don't you understand yet? There are many reasons, but the deciding factor is surely the fact that you used my money without my permission. But that was supposed to be marital assets. Robert sighed deeply. Kevin said the same thing. Well, of course, we were concerned about that, which is why we had already given Catherine a lifetime gift of her assets before the marriage. Does that mean you didn't trust us? I have no trust in anyone who has spent his wife's property. Besides, how much and for how long did your son neglect his wife and children? They were at a loss for words. Even I, their uncle, attended their first birthday parties. Of course, Catherine also came to our house. Well, the fact that we stopped talking about such things probably means you weren't considered family a long time ago. Robert seemed to enjoy grilling them at this point. Yes, just as you mistook those three as a different family. Oh, right. Kevin said something on the day of the wedding when he called Catherine. He said he was going to France with his family. Shocked, his father looked up and his mother covered her face. Family? Who was he talking about with that? Robert directed a very pleased smile at them and Madeline. That completely sealed the deal. How did you like it? Thank you, I'm very satisfied. Please proceed with the next steps. There aren't any more procedures to take, though. I exchanged a smile with Ava at the lawyer's remark. Later, the lawyer updated us. Sometimes Robert also got in touch. Their company, unable to receive further funding, was heading toward bankruptcy and ended up being absorbed by my brother's company. Saving the employees was deemed essential. They assisted that company in the first place because they liked what the employees made, not because the former in-laws ran a good business. I hadn't heard much detail from my parents, but Robert explained all that to me. And he had to give up his position as president, and they had to sell some property they owned and move into a rental property. They seemed to be struggling with what to do next. They've aged significantly due to the stress of the situation, and I've heard that health problems have surfaced as they were previously maintained by sheer willpower. Kevin is now making a fuss about having reserved a spot in a nursing home beforehand, as if it's a new idea. It seems financially difficult for them to get into one at this point. Kevin himself managed to secure re-employment at a company owned by his friend. His friend had led him into the company in one way or another given their previous relationship. However, this divorce has made others realize that he is not a trustworthy person. Consequently, although he was initially hired as a full-time employee, his position was downgraded to that of a contract worker. This essentially means that makes one wrong move and he's fired. Though I find it lenient, I hope he keeps working there to repay his debts. As for Madeline, she is in a difficult situation. She is currently living in a rental accommodation with her parents. However, having been a parasite single for 20 years, she really can't do much of anything. Even though their savings are running out, her parents desperately persuade her to find work, leading her to frequent the employment office. However, her job expectations are too high, making it hard for her to secure a job. That's to be expected. She's considering marriage, but of course that's difficult as well. I can only marvel at what she's been doing all these years. Still, our life here in Italy is incredibly bright and refreshing. Living abroad certainly comes with its risks. Joe, who lives in the U.S., calls me worried, but I reassure him each time that I'm fine. When I told him to visit sometime and maybe bring a lovely wife with him, he got shy. As long as we choose a safe area to live, life is generally calm. Learning Italian slowly, getting along with other American families, and thinking about what to do next under the bright sunshine and dry wind make each day enjoyable. There's a right time to divorce. I wouldn't say my 32 years of marriage were all bad, but it's because I let go. Now that I can have a future, from now on, I want to have fun and be active with my daughter and her husband. Let's conclude the story shortly. The years that followed were a whirlwind of new beginnings. Ava thrived in her new life in Italy, her career flourishing alongside her marriage. Joe, after a brief period of uncertainty, found his path, eventually settling down with a kind and supportive woman. I, meanwhile, reveled in my newfound independence. I traveled, learned new things, and discovered passions I never knew I had. Kevin, despite his initial struggles, eventually found a semblance of stability. He never truly understood the depth of his actions, but the consequences of his choices were undeniable. His relationship with his parents and sister remained strained, a constant reminder of the family he had abandoned. Madeline, on the other hand, continued to drift, her life a testament to the dangers of unchecked entitlement. As for me, I learned that sometimes letting go is the greatest act of self-love. My divorce was a painful but necessary step towards a life filled with purpose and joy. The years that followed were a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. I found happiness, not in the confines of a traditional family structure, but in the freedom to choose my path, create my own family, and live a life that truly reflected my values. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.